DJ Knuckles says, I'm waiting for the Tudor rant. No, that's going to be an actual episode, but I'll talk about it a bit later if you like. But I'm going to do an actual real episode because they always get way more views, and I can keep it nice and tight, and I can put in little movie clips that describe perfectly what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking and all of that. Good evening, everyone. How are you all? Great to see you all in the room and hanging out. What is happening? Who is here? Conversus. Watches and Wonders 3. No, I mean World War 3. Are we on the brink of World War 3 right now? That is the question. I don't really think so. But you never know. I think I have another computer playing fucking stream on the other side of you can't hear it anyway. Scott Tarlow, here's Photo Machine's expert foreign policy advice. The weekend before Christmas. Hey, listen, it's not advice, it's just my opinion. I like talking about certain things. I enjoy certain subjects. I think they are good. They are good, yeah. And I like to talk about them. So it's just my opinion, kids. That's all. Give me 1 second. I want to knock off that other machine. And he's back. I've got several machines around the house. You know how it is. Carlos Paggi. Hey, Machine and the gang. Hey, Carlos. Good to see you here. 360 in the room, kids. Give me an upvote. It helps. This is our Friday night chat. Relaxed, laid-back chat. Not necessarily about watches, although I will be discussing the Watches and Wonders Geneva event a little, and, you know, kind of the behind-the-scenes stuff that was going on. Because there's been quite a year of feuds and battles. And then we all wind up at that same event, don't we? Luckily, it's a very, very large room. So we're able to avoid one another. Though I have to commend Tim Wright, for not having any issues with just walking right up to someone who he knows hates his guts and going, hey. It's a sign of maturity, I think, that. So I will talk about that, but we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in the news first. I've got a guest coming on with me in just a moment, whom I respect a lot. I like to have chats with him. And yeah, we'll talk a bit about that. See what the general opinion is. And yeah, open to any questions coming from you guys. Hello from Norway. Mahatma, as in Mahatma Gandhi. I assume, because of your avatar there. Mahatma 618. How is it in Norway? Is it cold still? What am I drinking? Daniel. I'm actually just having a little spiked coffee. I'm going to have coffee. I'm on a bit of detox. I put on a few pounds in the past few weeks. All that editing and binge eating in the middle of the night, stuff like that, while I'm editing. So I'm not taking it, I'm taking it fairly slow here. So just a drop of whiskey into a nice black coffee. Ross Ryan, how was Milan with the Irish lads? It was golden, man. It was golden. The lads are great. We went to the AP house. We went to IWC. We had food, we had drinks. They're good boys. I believe Elton is going to be on Timmy's show tonight, so you guys should tune in. Evening from Bruges. Le Ferret, Christophe. Wow. That's a town I still want to see. Hi from Denmark, Martin Hansen. What's on the wrist? What do you think is on the wrist? What does it look like? A big fat Pam. 585. 585, is that it? Keep forgetting the reference. Limited to 1,000 pieces. Big shiny butte. We love it. What am I smoking? Nico asks. I'm having a Toscano Italiano. And it's the Antico. They come in a few different versions. The Classico. I'll let you guess what that means. And then there's the Vecchio or Extra Vecchio, and then the Antico. Antique. It's not. Oh shit! The numbers went up like crazy. You're all here for the scandal, huh? You guys are going mad for it. Yeah, I'll give you a bit of juicy stuff. Why not? Wouldn't be me if I didn't. There's Red Shovel. Evening all. Hung out with Red plenty in Geneva. It's a lot of fun. Give us enough vote, guys. It'd be nice to go to 1,000 upvotes, wouldn't it? The numbers are pretty big these days. I think I can expect at least 1,000 or at least 800 upvotes. It's right there. Boop. But I'm sure many of you watching are haters and you're downvoting right now. There's Tim. Upvote. Red. Get to 1,000. What scandal photo, Dave? It's not really a scandal. It's just general thoughts and observations over the weekends in Geneva and the general state of the watch world and watch community. That's all. After all, nothing to get your knickers in a twist over, but it'll be interesting. I think most of you guys will probably be interested in it. Let me bring in my guest. He is an educator who travels the world with the rich and famous, and a worldly guy and a very smart guy who teaches mathematics, physics, history, geography, Latin, English, and probably a slew of other things he can tell us. Welcome to the show, my good friend Nathaniel Hannon. How are you, man?
Hi, everybody. I'm doing pretty good. Did some yard work.
Yard work? It looks like a sunny day out there. It's
a very sunny day.
Yeah, it's beaming through the curtains.
It's in the mid 80s Fahrenheit and 30s Celsius here. So did some sweating.
Oh, it's in the 30s already. Wow. It dropped back down here. We had a beautiful, weekend, and it was warm in Geneva also, which it wasn't this time, exact same time last year. I had to wear a heavy coat last year in Geneva. But it's dropped again. When I got back to Venice, there's the Bora winds coming down from the Alps. And even though it's nice and bright and sunny, it's quite cold. I had to pull the big long coats back out again. I thought that I got rid of those for the rest of the year or for the rest of the summer.
Not something I have to worry about this time of year in Atlanta, and certainly not down in Florida.
So how come you're back home? I thought you were stationed elsewhere for a while. I lose track. I'm sorry if you told me already.
I lose track myself. Don't blame it yourself. The academic year came to an end last Friday for us, and they gave me a week off, so I came home. And tomorrow I'm headed out to Fort Lauderdale again. In fact, I was going to be headed out this afternoon, but then you suggested that we should get on together. So move the flight.
So you push things aside just for me, for my sake?
I did.
Wow, I'm touched. Thanks so much, man. It's going to be nice and sticky and hot and horrible down there in Florida. Right?
Yes, and don't forget
you're going to do lots of sweating and the bugs. Yeah, it's weird.
And the miniature dragons.
Those are hanging around, waiting to bite your ankles off. We did a lot of touring down in Florida. Yeah, we did a lot of touring down there. We did. We were kind of stationed down in Florida for a while. It was Jacksonville, Gainesville, Tallahassee, Naples, Fort Lauderdale.
Yep.
And zero activity in Miami because, of course, we were a rock band, and there's no rock music in Miami.
Nope.
There's lots of rock music in Gainesville.
Yeah.
You know?
The funniest thing to me about the iguanas is that when it gets down into the mid-40s Fahrenheit, the local weather services issue warnings about the iguanas that they will drop from your house.
Yeah. Oh, they'll drop.
They might come into your house, but they roost in the trees at night, and they're cold-blooded. So when the temperature goes so low, they can't hold on to the branch anymore. So they'll just fall on your head.
Have you ever spent any time in Aruba?
I've not.
That's just full of them there, and you're trying to get some sleep, and you can hear them crawling on the roof and stuff.
Right,
big fellas. You can be sitting at a swimming pool and accompanied by like 6 massive iguanas just lying down, just sitting there, not moving in the sun, baking themselves in the sun.
They love it.
So, can we talk a little bit about, because we were speaking on text there a few days ago when Iran sent all their slow, cheap drones, the bargain basement drones that took hours to get over to Israel.
Yep.
And we were texting a little, and I was like, oh, by the way, congrats on World War III Day. And you were like, yeah, not so much. It ain't going to be, it's purely symbolic. Is that where we still are now that these few days have gone by?
I'll give credit to the Iranians where credit is due, and that is that they learned from the Russians in Ukraine. And I say that because they sent 2 waves. They sent a bunch of, as you say, cheap drones, which were meant to soak up all of the anti-aircraft fire that the Israelis could throw.
Yes.
And then they sent the real attack, right? And the real attack were the ballistic missiles. And the ballistic missiles were aimed at Israeli military installations primarily.
Certainly.
So as far as the tactic, good on Iran. That was very smart. However, I'm not really sure that Iran intended very many, if any, of those missiles to get to their targets. And the reason that I say that is that for days, Iran broadcast pretty much exactly what they were going to do. And that enabled the Israelis and their allies, and pretty much everybody in the region, the Americans, the French, the Jordanians, everybody lined up to take down these projectiles.
Right.
And as a result, Israel successfully defended against this attack. So why did Iran do it? Well, they don't care about Gaza. They don't. They have explicitly said that Hamas are animals And, keep in mind, Hamas is Sunni and Arab, and Iran is Shiite and Persian.
Shiite.
So the
Yes.
Shiites consider those particular Sunnis to be apostates.
You're not supposed to say any of this, Nathaniel. The whole narrative is that Iran is fueling Hamas and delivering bombs to their
No, they
tunnels.
They are. That you don't have to like someone to enable them to achieve a military aim, right? In World War II, do you think that Churchill and Roosevelt really just loved Stalin? No.
Yeah, but the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yes, and Hamas is the enemy of Iran's enemy.
Right.
So absolutely, they help out Hamas to accomplish those objectives. But Iran doesn't care about Gaza. They do, however, care about saving face, right? And not very long before Iran's attack, what happened? Israel killed some Iranian leaders in an embassy. And had Iran done nothing in response to that,
would have looked weak.
It would have looked weak. And that is not something that Iran can afford to do.
Or anyone.
So what did they do? They made an attack, but they made an attack that they figured that Israel could defend. And then they told Israel and everybody else what they were going to do.
Case closed.
Right.
Right.
And
They
so
said that's that.
What did Israel just do in response? Well, again, Israel can't lose face.
Yes.
And Israel's feeling pretty froggy lately for obvious reasons.
Sure.
So they launched a token attack of ballistic missiles at Iran, and every single one of their missiles hit, right? So what that message is Iran, if you attack us, we can neutralize your attack. And if we attack you, you can't do the same. So how about everybody step back? We're only going to fire 2 handfuls of missiles at you in response to your 300 plus sortie a few days ago. Step back.
I mean, for me, I've been watching Bibi for years. Netanyahu talk about the threat of Iran and butter up everyone for the idea of war with Iran. For me, the attack on the embassy in Damascus was trying to light that match, if possible, for numerous reasons. One, not the least of which, I should say, would be to divert attention away from what's happening in Gaza and possibly in Rafah now. Definitely in Rafah. But also because while Iran is sitting there, it's a threat. And they want war. As far as I can see, Netanyahu and many others, people want to blame it all on Netanyahu. There's many like him just standing right beside him and right next to him. Taking Bibi out of his position of power, I don't think is going to change a whole lot, but I digress. I think that he's been trying to light that match and hoping. I think what stopped him then was all the other countries, including the United States. The United States said, please don't retaliate. Please don't do anything. We don't want another fucking war in the Middle East.
Yep.
The world is not, especially Americans, are not in the mood, especially after the quagmire that was Afghanistan and so on. They learned their lesson, if anything, from 9/11, correct? Or everything that came after 9/11 is what I mean. They don't want that. So for me, the stand down thing, as in, listen, we're going to send theater drones. We're going to do a theatrical attack that we know you can completely defend yourself from. But we need to at least show that we're not going to just take this up the ass from you fuckers. Was Iran's position more than anything else. The Iranians, out of the two, seem like the more passive of the bunch. I know that's not a popular opinion, but I'm full of non-popular opinions.
I mean, I'm not sure that I would describe either of those actors as passive.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely think that it is in Netanyahu's interest to keep the security picture cranked up because his continuance in power depends upon a precarious security situation.
The minute everything comes back to peace, then they can focus back on him, and he's out.
Just look at the polls.
Yeah.
The public opinion in Israel about Netanyahu is very low. And in general, people are not too excited about what he's doing in Gaza. So, he's got to keep attention, wag the dog.
Yes. It's a funny thing, but I mean, when I saw those, because for me, in my head, I know in the West, we've been spoon-fed this narrative that Iran is the aggressor, that Iran is the madman, that Iran is the danger. But I always come from, I come from very different angles with all of this stuff, all my whole life. And for me, I'll never forget that meme that's been going around the internet for years at this point, the list of countries that the United States has invaded and attacked, and it's fucking the length of my arm.
Almost as long as the British.
Right. Almost. That's their dream, that's who they're in competition with. And then Iran is on the other side. There's absolutely no one. So it doesn't really matter what the Ayatollah says. If you don't do, like, the proof is in the pudding. Words are cheap, right? You can say all sorts of shit, and you can say, Allah told me to do this. But, when it comes down to it, it's the guy actually kicking you in the balls rather than the guy who says he's going to kick you in the balls that you should be worried about. So for me, the Iranians, they don't like the idea of that pariah state there in their area, etc. And they have many conflicts of interest. But really, they didn't strike. They could have, if they cared about the Gazans, as you say, which they clearly don't, and no one does. No one seems to in the region. They could have struck Israel many, many times. The strike came from Israel. They hit their embassy first. The narrative isn't clear enough in Western media, as far as I can see, unless you're watching Al Jazeera. This is what happened. And using the same logic as anybody would use from October 7th, we were attacked. What would you expect us to do? We've got to retaliate. That exact same logic applies perfectly onto that too. But as far as I can see, the Iranians are slightly more peaceful than the bulldog that is the apartheid state is what I call it. Sorry, Israel.
I'm not so sure that I agree with the list of countries that Iran has allegedly not invaded, because
you think they're using proxies.
Well, that's also true, but that's not the point that I'm about to make. Mm-hmm. So I think that you are referring to Iran as it began in the 20th century.
Yes.
That is not Iran.
That's the new Iran.
But it's the same people and the same culture that have been there for a very long time. And there used to be this thing called the Persian Empire.
Certainly.
Now, the British, who were very good at taking over large areas for at least some periods of time, did subjugate the Persians for a while. Mm-hmm. Not for long. So while different people are in charge in Persia now than used to be, there's a fundamental culture there which goes even above religion. And I disagree that they're peaceful and never invade anyone, because in the long run of history, they invade a lot of people and they kill a lot of people, and it's the same folks. So I'm just not going to participate in the idea of a white and black situation. Certainly. Where Iran is a dove and Israel is a wolf.
Well, I wouldn't.
It's just not the case.
I'd appreciate it if you didn't stretch what I was saying out to those extremes.
Well, okay.
I'm saying between the two. I'm not saying Iran's a fucking dove. Jesus Christ, dude. You belong on Piers Morgan, man. No one ever implied anything such.
You mentioned proxies.
Yes.
And proxies were the name of the game with that meeting in the embassy. Right? That's why those guys were there.
That's why they hit it.
Proxies. And that's why Israel hit it.
Yeah.
So am I super happy about the idea that Israel violated international law by bombing an embassy? No. Was Iran up to nefarious things inside that embassy? Yes. There are no good guys.
There are no good guys. So do you have any feeling about, and I hope the audience appreciates that I have Nathaniel on, because clearly he's not of the same mind. We agree on many, many things, on a great many things, but not necessarily on geopolitics. And we still have great conversations nonetheless. Since the day we met, 3 years ago, I think, here in Venice, was it?
I have this on an app on my phone. Let's see how many days it's been.
While you're looking for that, I'll pull up a couple of comments. Some watch channel earlier was saying, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, that they like the channel, but this is not good. This is Friday nights. This is Who Needs a Drink. I don't talk necessarily about watches. I'll talk about pretty much anything I want to. And lately, there's been a lot of politics. If you don't like it, go find another channel. No problem. I won't be offended. But yes, plenty of other comments coming in. Very interesting stuff. We, of course, we love our watches. We love our fine things, our wine, our whiskey, our travel, our architecture, and our history. And now we get into global politics a little bit, because if I'm going to talk about World War II and the valor of the men fighting, along with the Allies in the Battle of Britain, that's just as political as talking about current events. So if you're not into it, guys, I won't be offended. Just there's the door, no problem. If you want to hear an interesting conversation, just because you have a watch on your wrist doesn't mean you don't have a brain or an opinion, and it doesn't mean that these things may or may not affect you. So why not talk about them? Did you find the photo?
1,274 days, which is 3.5 years.
3.5. I would have said just under 3. Time flies, man.
You bet. You bet.
But so what's the feeling in the States? I mean, what would the feeling be now if, let's say Iran were saying, okay, let's send a bunch of missiles to exhaust their Iron Dome and various other deflection systems. And now that they're exhausted, while they're refilling their chamber, we're going to shoot again. I don't think it's going to happen, because, again, I think that Iran are a little bit, they're not a dove, but they're a tad more in the interest of peace than Israel is. I think Israel is, personally, I just think they're the aggressor. They're the bulldog in most situations, especially in that area, like surrounded by who they're surrounded by. If you wake up in the morning and there were attacks overnight, because this is always how it is, right? We wake up to terrible news because they're ahead of us in time, and a lot more ahead for you. And you realize that war has been declared. How do you feel as an American, as an American patriot?
May I ask further questions about the premises there?
Sure. I mean, this is all conjecture. This is projecting here.
When you say war has been declared
between Iran and Israel,
right? What exactly can Iran do to Israel militarily?
Not as much as what Israel can do to Iran. I think it would be a terrible idea for Iran and a terrible idea for the region.
In order to go to war, a country must have objectives to accomplish, right? Mm-hmm. And the objectives that Iran is capable of accomplishing in Israel are narrow, because Iran does not border Israel, and none of the countries between Israel and Iran would allow Iranian troops safe passage.
Well, we've already seen that. Jordan were implemental in shooting down some of those drones, those drone attacks, yes.
And Iran does not have airlift capability to move an army. Mm-hmm. And Iran can't get there over the water, not only because they don't have the naval assets to do so, but because the Israelis could see their boats coming from far away and take them out with F-35s. So They
Don,
can't.
sorry, Don, excuse me, put a pin in that for a second. Don, Israel is bulldog, really, Oshin, by not attacking? I'll remind you that Israel blew up an embassy in Damascus, an Iranian embassy, completely violating international law, the Vienna Convention, and so on. Yeah, that is an aggressive move. Iran wasn't doing anything to them, not directly, at least. You could, you can conjure up all sorts of stuff about Hamas and so on. Personally, I think Hamas are resisting, but I come out on the other side of this opinion. You don't have to listen to it, but I think it would behoove you to go ahead, Nathaniel.
So I was saying that Iran does not have the arrangements, the logistics necessary to mount an invasion of Israel. So that leaves...
And they don't have a bomb.
And they don't have a bomb. That leaves things that Iran can do by air. Now, the Iranian Air Force, compared to the Israeli Air Force, is a joke.
Yeah.
So that leaves their rocket corps. Well, okay, let's say that Iran targets all of their rockets at everything military in Israel.
Yeah.
And Israel and the United States and France and Jordan start picking off those rockets. Now, Iran has thousands of them, right? Mm-hmm. Iran can shoot a lot of rockets, but not very many of them are going to come through.
Right.
And then what is Iran going to do when Israel, who does have a functioning air force and has planes that Iran can't detect and can't shoot down, decides to retaliate? This sounds really stupid. So let's say Iran does do that.
Mm-hmm.
What the Americans will wake up to is a bunch of smoking holes in the ground in Israel and many, many, many more smoking holes in the ground in Iran.
Right.
At which point the average American is going to watch the news and say, sounds like Iran really shouldn't have poked that beehive.
Right.
So what war aims could Iran possibly have? I don't see what war aims they could hope to accomplish. So I don't see them declaring war.
And what about Israel declaring war on Iran?
I think Israel's kind of got their
more
hands
likely.
full.
Sure.
I think
They're engaged. They're already engaged in a war, what they would call a war. I don't call it a war.
And so I think that after Gaza's taken care of, right? I think then maybe you could start talking about Israel plotting to go to war with Iran. But again, I'm not really sure what Israel's war aims would be. Israel is certainly very annoyed by Hezbollah.
Well, haven't you seen Bibi? He went in front of Congress there 6 years ago or something like that. I can't remember. Remember, he did it without even the permission from Obama, and he held up a fucking thing with a bomb, going, "This is Iran." He's been going on about the threat from Iran, which apparently you don't think is there at all.
Not
for
until they
ages. Not until they have nukes, which is why they got involved in Stuxnet and tried to take them out. And is why, and I'll tell you where I'm going with this. I think that I don't trust the Israelis at all. Not a single word they say. And because I've been watching this conflict now for over 30 years, and I certainly don't believe a thing they say. I think what they do, they're excellent at subterfuge. And I think remember the poking of the hornet's nest was them blowing up a full fucking embassy. If Iran or any other country blew up an Israeli embassy anywhere in the world, it would be a declaration of war. For some reason, we're supposed to overlook this complete breach. But that was the poking, hoping, and I was thinking to myself, please, Iran, don't do anything. Please don't do anything, because they're baiting you. They want war with you. They want to fucking level you guys to the ground. They wanted it for a long time. If you retaliate, you're only going to get them to say, you see those crazy Iranians, and boom. And the first place they're going to hit are the nuclear facilities, because apparently the word on the street is Iran has been continuing its nuclear proliferation program and is only 6 or 8 months away from a bomb.
Yep.
And the moment they have a bomb, everyone has to back the fuck off.
Yes.
So as far as I can see, the Israelis are excellent at taking opportunities, just like the Brits, just like the Americans. When something bad happens to them, they say, okay, that was terrible, but let's use this. Let's make lemonade out of lemons. Let's take this opportunity now to get ahead with other things that we've been interested in doing.
Yep.
I feel like this little bit of tit for tat could lead to a couple of very accurate strikes on their nuclear facilities. Boom, 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 take them off, set them back another 10 years with proliferation.
Maybe, although I would just say that from the perspective of Israeli military history, Israel has never needed an excuse to go after Iranian nuclear facilities.
That's an excellent point.
They have gone after Iranian nuclear facilities kinetically, not just with Stuxnet, kinetically on more than one occasion. And if they felt that they were in danger of facing an Iran with a bomb, they would do so again without thinking twice.
I agree with that. That's one point I feel like a lot of people who are pro-Palestine or a lot of people on the left or whatever, well, the left isn't necessarily that either. They make this point about like, oh, they're using this as, you know, as cover to get ahead with what they're doing. As far as I'm concerned, the Israelis never asked for anyone's permission to do anything. They don't care about the public opinion. Right now, the entire planet despises them. I mean, that is, apart from leaders of countries, populations is the biggest protests in the world. And they don't give a flying fuck. They don't care about anyone's opinion. So when somebody says, oh, yeah, they're using October 7th as an excuse, I'm like, they would have done it anyway before. They were kind of already doing it. So, yes, I agree with you there that, yeah, just hitting Iran, hitting their nuclear facilities, their plants, they could have done it years ago and just gone, whatever. It wasn't us, you know.
Yep. And it would not surprise me if the missiles that they did launch in this latest retaliatory strike, it would not surprise me if some of them were destined for those facilities or support facilities, right?
That's the important thing. That's the important thing. As you say, they don't have an amazing military. They don't have amazing power in the air. They don't have F-35s and F-22 Raptors and so on. They have a certain amount of power, sure, but there's a few countries between the two of them, and they seem to be interested in protecting Israel as well.
Right.
You know, despite what many Zionists will tell you, oh, they're surrounded by aggressors. You know, there's 22 Muslim countries surrounding a tiny little, you know, underdog. Actually, that's not real. That's misleading people. I believe.
In 1973, that was true. In 2024, I'm not sure that's true anymore.
Listen, it doesn't matter how small the fucking country is. If I walk in the room and Bill Gates is there and there's a big party of people, Bill Gates is apparently a very short man. Who's the most powerful man in the room? It doesn't matter that I'm 6 foot and a 46-inch chest. He's the most powerful man in the room. It doesn't matter what size the country is. I despise that talking point. I hear fucking Dennis Prager making it all the time. Oh, it's just a tiny little country. You can put your thumb over it on the map. Meanwhile, they're surrounded by all. Yeah. The most powerful guy in the room sometimes is a little short fucker, the most aggressive little bastard who has all the money and all the power. So that's the way I see Israel. I think it's a moot point when it comes to there. I digress slightly. Do you think anyone else would step in? Do you think Russia or China might go, you know what? Seeing as Iran are doing it and they don't really have the F-35s, we've got some F-35s or some MiGs.
So those are two good questions. Can we split them up and deal with them separately?
Yeah, start with whichever one you like.
So I'm going to start with China. China is all the way around the world. The Middle East and the stability of the Middle East is extremely, extremely important to China. And the reason that the stability of the Middle East is extremely important to China and not any longer important to the United States is that China is a net importer of energy products to a ridiculous level. And where do those energy products come from? They come from the Middle East. So China has a very strong interest in not having any Middle Eastern wars going on.
Okay.
So would China come and back up Iran? No, don't think so. Probably sell them weapons. Let's pretend that China did want to back up Iran. How are they going to get the People's Liberation Army there? China now has the largest navy in the world, but none of those ships can go more than 500 miles. So
you think logistically China can't reach the rest of the planet?
I know.
I mean, how would? So how? I mean, isn't it just or a little bit more difficult, perhaps, than the United States sending boots over to put on the ground?
Our military
is everywhere
from the beginning was expeditionary, right?
Yeah.
Because we are 2 oceans between us and anybody that we're going to fight.
And you also have troops stationed all around the entire planet.
That is also true. That is also true. But if you want 200...
I mean, the attacks on Iraq in 2003, most of those planes were launched from here, from Aviano in Italy.
Yes. And the UK and Montana and Oklahoma. I mean, the United States can reach out and touch someone like no one else.
Yeah.
The Chinese cannot. They simply do not have the logistics to do that. Their military is built as a defensive military, except for Taiwan and except what the Navy is doing in building up these islands to try and command sea lanes. Because China understands that its great vulnerability is a blockade, much like the United States perpetrated on Japan, which caused Japan to bomb Pearl Harbor.
Yes.
Right. So the United States instituted an energy blockade on Japan before Pearl Harbor in order to try and convince Japan to calm down, because Japan was going to run out of energy if they couldn't break up our blockade. Japan's solution to that, backed in a corner, was to declare war on the United States and take out our Navy, which was pretty smart overall. I mean, it prevented us from mounting serious opposition to them for a while. So their gambit paid off for a while. China doesn't want that ever to happen. So they want to control shipping lanes and make sure that they can get their oil in from the Middle East. But anyway, China needs the Middle East stable. So would China pitch in on a war in Iran even if they could get troops there? I don't think they would. Russia.
Okay. Can we move on to Russia? I like that you started with China and then you're moving to the bad news. Start with the good news first.
I'm not sure that Russia's bad news, because I think if anybody is likely to start World War III, it's going to be as a result of the current conflict in Ukraine, not anything going on in the Middle East. My thoughts about Russia and Iran are simply that Russia is currently fully engaged. So what are they going to do to pitch into Iran? How are they going to send materiel of war when they themselves are running short on materiel of war? They are putting tanks in the field that were manufactured in the 1950s. So where's Russia going to get the stuff to send to Iran? And they're certainly not going to send troops.
So the sum total of, if you don't mind me jumping ahead a little, the sum total of this is Iran's in a very bad spot right now, because I'll repeat it, it's been no secret from Bibi for years now that he'd like to take out Iran, or certainly cripple them.
Yes.
Okay. And maybe take out the entire regime, the Ayatollah and everyone else.
Yes.
It's a really good time to do that. Like, it's a really good time to buy a Rolex right now because the fucking market is down. It's a really good time to strike while the iron is hot. So don't you think he might do that? Because it's definitely it's been an objective, and nothing to do with October 7th or anything like that. It's been on his menu now, top of his menu for a long time.
I can
He's made
see
no secret
why.
of it.
I can see why, from a strategic point of view, Netanyahu would be interested in taking out the regime in Iran.
Yeah.
I'll happily grant you that. I think that is true. I'm not sure that any external force is capable of taking out the leadership in Iran, simply because the country is so mountainous and they have so many bunkers that are hardened against aerial attack that it's very unlikely that you could kill them from the air. And it would be very difficult to go in on the ground. And Israel doesn't have the logistics to go in on the ground anyway. So the way to get a regime change in Iran is to inspire its people to cause a regime change. Now, to an extent, the world was trying to do that for an awfully long time with sanctions, which made life very unpleasant for the average Persian. Ultimately, those sanctions...
I don't know about very unpleasant. Sorry. My cousin's been to Iran 9 times. He said it's a fucking amazing country and lovely people, and they live a wonderful, splendid life.
Well,
I think it's a very Western idea that these people are all living like in North Korea or something. But anyway.
I certainly don't think that Iranians are living like Afghanis. But if you look at the rate of GDP growth and decline in Iran before the Shah fell versus now, I don't think that one can say that the current regime has caused flourishing in Iran.
Certainly not. I mean, they used to be a superpower. They used to be, Tehran was one of the capitals of the world. It's certainly not anymore.
And I think that there are probably enough old people in Iran who remember how things used to be.
Yes.
And certainly we've seen protests in Iran.
Yes.
About
we've seen a certain amount of social change in Iran by itself, just modernization in Iran.
And to the extent that throwing those people a bone will keep the regime in power for a while longer, that makes sense.
Let me ask you something. You know, earlier you were saying about that attack on the embassy. Yes, seems like provoking and so on. But those guys in there were brewing up some dubious shit and so on. Skullduggery, shenanigans going on behind the scenes there. And, you know, a lot of people in the Far East would, you know, disagree or they'd be irate about that idea. Do you give on a personal level, as an American intellectual, if you don't mind me calling you that, do you lose any sleep over that they can break international law like that? Are you fine with that? Are you comfortable with that? Do you give Israel a pass? And let me add on to that. Are you giving Israel a pass on the 30,000+ dead in Gaza also? Are you saying, oh, I shed a tear, but only one? On the other hand, it's a necessary thing that has to go ahead. Do you fit in with that narrative?
You just asked me a whole lot of questions.
Can I know
you narrow
I did.
It down to one at a time, please?
Well, we're constrained on time here. I have to start talking about the shenanigans of Watches and Wonders in about 10 or 15 minutes.
Okay.
But I mean, how does it make you feel as an intellectual American intellectual?
About everything that's going on in the Middle East right now?
I suppose what I'm asking you really is, do you give Israel a pass? Let's start with that one. Israel bomb an embassy. If they did that to the United Kingdom, the United States, or many other countries, fuck no, that would not be tolerated. And it shouldn't be tolerated by any country. But
do I give Israel a pass on bombing the embassy?
Yes.
No. It breaks international law. However, the funny thing about international law is that it is law in name only, because there is no sovereign body to enforce the law. So is it really a law if there is no sovereign to enforce it? I would say from the perspective
it's like
of
the
International
Court of Justice. Like they all stand up there. They're all 800 years old. And I'm wondering, like, what power do they have? They say there's there's credible evidence for a genocide or whatever the wording is. I'm paraphrasing, but has it made a fuck all difference at all other than public opinion? No. But so you're right. International law is kind of there in theory,
Yeah.
but not in practice.
International law is there if there is someone to enforce it. Consider that the Nuremberg trials after World War II
Mhm.
basically were illegal, right? Because
Yes.
the authority on which the Nuremberg trials occurred was simply the authority imposed by the conquerors. The United States, Britain, the USSR showed up and said, okay, we believe that you've all been very bad, and now we're going to execute you for it. What law did they break? Other than natural moral laws, what
Mhm.
law did the Nazis break? Because everything they did was legal in Germany.
You have to be very careful now, man, because you're treading into Holocaust denial
No, I'm
territory.
not denying that it happened. It absolutely happened, and it was
No,
murder.
I
But
know, but you might get labels from the ardent other side because, of course, it is. It's been around for years, that talking point. Why, it was the first time it became illegal to lose a war. So that's a
in a
strong.
sense, yeah.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, these guys who are at war wind up on trial. So yes, I mean, I agree with the Nuremberg trials personally because of the atrocities,
Yeah.
but you're right. You make a very strong point. It wasn't necessarily in coherence with international law.
It makes sense in the way that both the Allies and the European, Germany, Italy, they shared a cultural, historical, moral framework, right?
Yeah.
So it makes sense for someone from France to point at someone in Germany and say, according to our shared historical cultural standards, what you did was wrong, and therefore you deserve to die. That makes moral sense. Could we
Yeah.
do the same thing with the Japanese? Not really sure we could.
Right.
They don't have a Christian moral framework of cultural heritage, right?
Right.
So from that point of view, from a moral point of view, the Nuremberg trials make a lot of sense. But from a legal point of view, I'm not really sure that they did. And that's the issue with international law today, because international law depends upon someone willing to enforce it.
And no one really can.
Who's gonna? The United States is not going to punish Israel for blowing up the embassy.
Well,
Who else is gonna?
we've seen that. How do you feel about that too? You just touched off something there. I mean, I feel like the U.S., no matter what it is, it's like Israel's the little brother, and they just keep bailing them out of jail. They keep fucking excusing it. They keep funding, no matter how much trouble the little brother gets into. Or is it the bigger brother? These people who say, truthfully, including previous leaders of Israel, have said, actually, America is our bitch. We say what goes, and they follow.
Well, I'm not sure that one could really say that the United States actually does that, simply because at no point has the United States sent ground troops to defend Israel when it has been attacked in a war.
Well, they've been very implemental in the past 6 months, and even with the, defending from the Iranian attack, they were there helping shoot down the missiles, as were Jordan and other countries as well. Admittedly, Saudi Arabia,
Yes.
which is basically a business partner of the United States, as we all know, a huge one. But the missiles landing that have been landing in Yemen for years, the missiles that have been landing in the bombs that have been dropping on Gaza quite often have American tags
Yep.
on them. So I don't know about, I think America is the blood is on American hands every bit as much, I would personally say.
I think there's probably a difference between giving somebody weapons and putting 50,000 troops on the ground. And that is basically currently our saving grace in Ukraine, staving off the Third World War.
Right. Interesting points. I love it, man. I love talking to you and getting these perspectives. Where do you see this going from here? Do you think this is it? Do you think this is
For
the
now,
end?
I think this is it. I think I predicted to you on
They're
text
like
the other
shots
day.
across the bow.
I think I predicted to you on text the other day that they're going to
Yes.
scream at each other and they're going to punch at each other, and each of them are going to have a little bloody nose, but nothing big is going to happen. And I think that's what just happened. So
I'd love that.
unless
I'd love that to be true, because who the fuck wants third world war, like, or whatever that it would be. But I don't trust the Israelis. I just don't, and I shouldn't, because he's been very overt about it. The whole administration have been about their gumming, their want, their need, their hunger for a conflict with Iran.
well,
I mean, they've done it so overtly over many years. Anybody I know who's like-minded to me about that whole situation, everyone agrees, oh yeah, this is their moment to start to light that match. And they've been dying to do it for a long time. You make a great point. Why wouldn't they just do it before? They don't need anyone's permission. They never have. And that's a very good point. But I just feel like when a person shows you who they are, believe them. When they go up, and when Bibi flies all the way to the States without Obama's permission, because Obama was leading at the time, and walks into Congress and fucking holds up a big map of Iran and an image of a bomb, and why Iran is the problem, and why Iran is behind everything, and Iran needs to be taken care of. Believe him. So when they strike at Iran, or they strike an embassy, it feels to me like they're trying to light that match, and they're trying to get the United Kingdom, the United States, and France, and other places behind them. Let's fucking flatten Iran, or at least let's take out the entire administration and all their nuclear proliferation.
Well, I think to sum up, my position is to say something that's going to sound different to you than it is on the surface. I'm going to say I trust Israel and every other country in this discussion to act selfishly.
Certainly. I mean, isn't that why the poor Palestinians have no help? Because everyone's being the poor Palestinians they never had anything. They have no
Yes, no
chips.
one cares about them.
Nobody cares. They have no oil. They have nothing. They have nothing to bargain with.
No one cares about them.
There's no currency no one cares. There is
not
no
even the West Bank not even the West Bank Palestinians care about them.
I mean, they do. Come on, that's unfair.
What have they done?
They can't do anything. What have they done? They're being held back. They have their own problem with settlers shooting them in the face.
I seem to remember
with free AK-47s.
I seem to remember in 2000 there was an intifada because Ariel Sharon mounted Temple Mount.
Yeah, there was a separation. Now it's the PLO on one side and Hamas on the other side.
So where's the intifada?
Listen, I mean, I think you're talking about two people who are handcuffed on opposite sides of the room, like in the movie Saw. I don't think you're looking at what the people in the West Bank are completely debilitated. They have no position upon which, other than a few protests on the street and so on, then they get fucking shot in the head with impunity by the Israelis. Like, I don't think they're in a position to make any moves for these people who are suffering even worse than they are, 20 miles, 60 miles across the way, or whatever, 100 miles across the way. I think that's unfair. Do you mind me saying that?
I'm not sure if it is fair or not. I agree with you that the people of the West Bank do not have the means to make an effective, as in to accomplish aims.
Yes.
Resistance.
Yes.
But look at the historical record. Did they have the means when Ariel Sharon mounted Temple Mount 24 years ago to make any changes then either? No. Didn't stop them.
for the people in Gaza.
So I'm saying that I agree with you that they can't actually accomplish anything at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But that's never stopped them before from raising a holy panic, right?
Sure.
That's never stopped them before from having an uprising. So
you're
why aren't
you're
they
telling
having
me
an
that the
uprising
people
now?
in the West Bank do not care about the people.
Actions speak
in
louder than
Gaza.
words.
I would say that Fatah doesn't like Hamas, and there's the problem there, and there's the
That's true.
separation. Okay, it's quite like Ireland, you know, De Valera versus Michael Collins. Unfortunately, the oppressed start bickering amongst themselves, and that's an inevitable situation when you have a superior oppressor above you, that you have a common enemy at first, and then eventually, as the years go by, you begin to separate into. Some people are like, listen, we'll take whatever we can get because we just want to live.
Yeah.
Versus the other hardliners who are like, no, we want it all or nothing.
Yep, I agree with that.
I wouldn't say that. I think it's too far to say that the people in the West Bank don't care. I think they care a lot. And I think they're looking at their brothers and sisters. But we agree on the fact that no one's going to help the people in Gaza because the people in Gaza have nothing to trade.
Yes.
There's nothing under their feet. There's no gold. There's no power. There's no currency. They don't even have a fucking passport of their own. They have nothing.
Yes.
So they're just the downtrodden.
Yes.
Yeah.
All of that is true.
Final thoughts? I think the crowd really appreciate your thoughts on this stuff, and I mean, certainly do.
My perspective on world politics is that the only thing that's going to fix it is a few rosaries. There's no realpolitik. Like the Blessed Virgin Mary is my intercession for the solution to world politics. Worked for John Paul II. Hopefully it'll work for me too.
Wow. Yeah. I don't know. I've just seen this as like a pressure cooker for so long. And now the cracks are beginning to show, which is why we had the conversation on text the other day. I'm like, oh, here we go. Here it comes. I've just been waiting for it to happen. And I feel like because popular opinion for Israel is at an all-time low now, I feel like it's the moment where they kind of go, well, fuck it. Everyone hates us anyway. Let's get on with what we've got to do. And what we got to do is we got to take out Iran's nuclear facilities, their plants, because that's the most important thing. The moment Iran get a bomb, the whole narrative changes, right? Yep. Because it's not one bomb. Once they get one bomb, they've got a lot of bombs. And that puts them on the level playing field. I used to say years ago, can Iran hurry up and get a bomb, please? Because that will make everybody fucking stand back. There's one good thing I can say about the bomb is that it makes everybody shut the fuck up for a minute and stand back. When you know you have a formidable enemy, you tend to be a little bit nicer to them, right? Yeah. Same thing on the street. You've got a gun. He's got a gun. Everybody put their guns away and let's talk.
Yep.
Whereas if one guy has a gun, he's got the authority. And as it happens now, as we stand, I should say, it's that situation. It's like that guy's going to try and get a gun, and before he gets one, we need to fucking take him out.
Although, I'll say this. If I were Israel, I would be feeling a whole lot better about Iran having nuclear warheads today than I would have felt a week ago.
Why is that?
Iran just attacked Israel with how many ballistic missiles, and how many of those ballistic missiles got through?
I believe one. I believe that everyone's saying there was one young girl injured. There was a couple of people injured. One young girl maybe died.
I like those odds.
They're good odds. Yeah.
So would I, if I were Israel, would I want Iran to have nukes? Nope. But if that's the kind of ratio of defense that I can feel confident in against Iranian ballistic missiles, they're not as scary as they sound.
I don't think the Iranians are as scary as they sound. I think the Ayatollah is a bit of a madman.
Yeah.
But again, I've never subscribed to that idea, because for me the proof is in the pudding. Is you can saber rattle all you want, but for me, the most dangerous guy in the room was always the quiet guy, the guy who breaks your legs in the alleyway behind the nightclub, but he never said a fucking word the whole time. Guys who scream bloody murder are a different kind of ilk. And as far as I'm concerned, the aggression has been coming from the West most of the time. Meanwhile, Iran are painted as these madmen, these, vicious madmen. And in the past 60, 70 years, haven't made any moves of the sort of that sort at all. Have never bombed directly. This is the first time in history they've actually attacked Israel directly, leaving aside all the narrative and all the rhetoric.
Yes, although, Hezbollah.
Sure,
Hezbollah.
by proxy. Yeah.
If I'm going to have a closing statement, my closing statement is I'm worried about World War III because of the Russo-Ukrainian war, and I'm worried about that because this war ends one of two ways. Way one is that Ukraine enters Russian territory victorious, at which point nuclear weapons fly. Way two is that Russians keep going to the Fulda Gap in Poland, at which point nuclear weapons fly, because NATO conventional forces would tear Russian conventional forces to shreds. So both of those situations have nuclear weapons flying through the air, and I'm not happy with either of those outcomes, but I don't see a third one.
Right. Sam Cat says, I'm Palestinian from the West Bank. What your guest is claiming is totally bogus. Palestinians are one and the same in the occupied West Bank and Gaza.
Okay. I'll accept their point of view. And
if they're going to feel for their brothers, it's like Dubliners feeling for people from Cork or vice versa.
Okay. Well, I'm pretty sure that people from Cork volunteered to join the Republican forces when bad things happened in Dublin.
Yes.
Okay. So I would like to know, it's an honest question. I would like to know what the Palestinian West Bank people are doing. Not what they're
You'd
feeling.
like to know what the guy who's had his arms chopped off and who's sitting on the floor handcuffed to a fucking toilet seat is doing to help the other guy on the other side of the room who's handcuffed to a toilet seat.
Yes,
I think
it's
grossly unfair.
In Monty Python, I believe that the result is somebody bites somebody's kneecaps off.
I just think, I don't know, man. I love your perspective, and it's mind expanding, but shit, man, expecting anybody in the West Bank to try in their horrific position that they're already in to try to help the other guys who are in an even worse position, I don't see how that's any sort of proof that the people in the West Bank aren't supporting their brothers on the other side.
I think emotionally they have opinions.
Well, it all starts emotionally.
Right.
It's emotionally is where it all begins, and then you maybe put it into effect.
Well, it's been a few months.
Anyway, fantastic perspective, man. I have to move on to other subjects tonight, but
okay.
Thanks for coming on.
I recommend this.
What is it? Gattinara. Let's have a look. I'll do a full screen. Travaglini. Have you got a airplane flying past your building right now? There's something.
I think somebody's doing yard work.
Yard work. Yeah. Travaglini Gattinara. What kind of wine is that?
It is. They make it out of Nebbiolo, and it is DOCG in Piedmont.
Oh wow, Gattinara. Wow, interesting. And is it good? Does it taste like Barolo or Fresa or any of those?
One of my favorites. It's good for steaks. I'd say it's lighter than your typical Barolo.
A little lighter. Let's see what you have on the wrist while you're at it. There she is.
There she is.
That's the dream, man.
Almost every day. My other watches are jealous.
Still one of my dream watches, dude. Look at that fucker with that dial. That's the dial. That's the one to have.
Well, I keep getting told by people that this watch is actually easy to get and not very valuable. So maybe you'll get lucky.
Give me a break. That's not true at all. That's the one everybody wants. Maybe they're lucky enough to find it on the leather strap.
If you go on Chrono, there are 2 listings for this watch in the United States, and both of those listings say that they. Why were there balloons?
I don't know. That's bizarre. That was super weird.
Both of those listings say that the piece has to be acquired. So, how's it easy to get?
I wonder, did AI do that? Because I congratulated you on the watch. Congratulations. Let's see if it does it again. Because I know AI is coming into StreamYard a little. No, it's true. It's a very, very hard watch to find and get. I saw one in Dublin 6 months ago, and it was in the 50s.
Yeah.
It was 54 grand they wanted for it.
In euros.
In euros, which is close to 60.
Yeah.
In dollars. Yeah, it's a beautiful watch, man. Congratulations on it once again.
Oh, I'm wearing the heck out of it. So
good stuff, man. Get back to your garden, and thank you so much for your perspective.
Alrighty. Have a good one.
You're on here for that reason, and you did. I think you did very well. I think the overall consensus is that it was a splash of water in the face for me. Yeah?
I mean, I'm not saying I'm right about everything, but those are my humble thoughts.
They're your opinions. I'm the same. It's like, don't believe me, just take it and put it in your files. Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
I will see you soon.
You bet.
Thank you so much, man. Fantastic.
Bye-bye.
Well, there you have it. We love Nathaniel. Brilliant and informative and well-informed and interesting insights. After that conversation, I feel like, well, who cares now? They can bomb the shit out of Iran. Go ahead. You got nothing to lose. Meanwhile, I don't know if I'm fully comfortable with that idea, with that feeling. Otherwise, why is there such a threat? You know. But top guy, fantastic stuff. Let me get back through the chats here. There are a couple of super chats. We are. Andrew Alkovich said earlier, it's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine. He's a Michael Stipe fan. Possibly last call. Make it a good one. Upvote everyone and subscribe. Thank you, sir. And JC Kingsley, $5. Oisin, have you seen the movie Iron and Silk by chance? The discussion about a newspaper from World War II is brilliantly done and worth seeing if you can. I will check it out, Kingsley. Thank you so much, man. Iron and Silk. I'll keep that in mind. How do you guys feel? Everybody, was that interesting? Hey, man, I got to keep it interesting here on the channel. And again, I like to talk about current events. I don't care. People say, stay off religion and politics, but I don't give a fuck. I'll talk about whatever I want. You know, next week I'll be talking about some watch or something, or some girl or something like that. You know, it's just the way of it. And it's good to have these chats. What's great about, I always like with certain conversations, you can have opposing thoughts or different kind of opinions, but it never gets heated or too heated. I don't mind it getting a little heated, but quite often people can turn into teams. You know, I'm right and you're wrong. Whereas I much prefer the intellectual conversation. Just, you know, and what do you think? And let me play with those thoughts. I've told you guys this before, but I've sat around a table with neo-fascists here in Italy, and I don't agree with anything they fucking say, but I want to hear what they think and what, you know, where they're coming from. So at least I know, you know what I mean? And you might learn something as well. You might be like, I never thought about it that way. And let me put that in my files, you know, in one of my drawers with all my files in the background there and add it to my information. Rufus 499. Curious your thoughts about the guy who set himself on fire outside of Trump trial. I don't know anything yet. I heard that it had happened. We don't know if he's a pro-Trump guy who sees it as a miscarriage of justice, that maybe, you know, he loves Trump so much and he can't stand the idea of his deity going in front of a jury at a criminal trial, or if it's somebody protesting the war or the conflict in the Middle East, or if it's something else. Do we have details yet? I don't think we have details. The self-immolation thing is very, very strong statement, because you're not around to explain yourself later. You better leave a note somewhere, you know. It's like the poor chap who went outside the Israeli embassy there a couple of months ago and did that. He was screaming "Free Palestine" as he was burning, so we know what it was about. And he was a member of the military, an active member of the military. It was very powerful, in my opinion. John Kerr 199, $2. Thank you so much. There, she of those for sale. There, what are you saying? There's for sale in Omega. Okay, I don't know. Maybe there's a typo there, man. I think your keyboard is acting up on you. If you want to write to me again, you don't have to super chat it. I'll try and find it. There's Omegas for sale. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, I mean, in the current watch market, there are plenty. It's easy to get certain Omegas. Yeah. I mean, a Snoopy is still hard to get, and any brand new releases are going to be hard to get. But anything from, you know, anything announced last year or whatever is pretty easy to get at this point. Derek, he must have bought a lot of Trump shares, and that's terrible. I mean, who knows what the guy's motives were? Maybe there's going to be some post he left on social media or something. They'll find it, and some people will spin it. That's normally the way things are. Aren't you guys happy I have interesting people on? I'd like to do a bit of a Piers Morgan at some point and have contrarians, complete contrarians on the show, you know, to discuss these matters. I think it's good to talk about this stuff. And you all have opinions about this stuff. It doesn't matter that you're into watches. You're also living, human, breathing people, and you have opinions about the world. So, hell, even when you talk about the watch market, you are talking about the markets of the world. The watch market is affected by that, but you're talking about crypto. You're talking about the stock exchange. So whether you like it or not, you're discussing current affairs, whether you're aware of it or not. So, final thoughts here. Nicholas Andresson. Are you from Scandinavia? Looks like that. Thanks to Nathaniel for clarifying and elucidating, good word, for a confused and wrongly navigated Oshin who needs assistance. All right. My opinions on this stuff are fairly ironclad, but I'm not one to limit speech and allow other opinions into the room, sometimes to my own detriment. Nicholas, if I had a neo-Nazi on here, who I could easily do that, you wouldn't be, they would clarify their positions. So then in that case, you'd be swinging on the other side. So it's just kind of the way it goes. The holes I poke in Nathaniel's arguments are that Iran is seen as this heavy threat, whereas he's showing that Iran isn't at all a threat, in which case I'm not sure why they haven't hit those nuclear facilities a long time ago if they really pose no significant threat at all. You have to remember Nathaniel is an American patriot, and that can be quite blinding sometimes. So just keep that in mind too. Not to demean his opinions or diminish on his opinions. I think they're very valid. But I could just as easily have another intellectual on here from the other side of the fence who would, you know, put different arguments forward. So, but it's good. It's a good conversation. I could have John on, who works for the American government, and he would probably have similar opinions as well. But as you know, we all get along very well. It's not important that we get along very well, but it is nice that we do. And what that shows is a level of intellect, which is the important thing to me. Shall we talk about watches and wonders? Yeah, so I know a lot of people are waiting for this kind of stuff. So I was at Watches and Wonders. I went kind of last minute to Geneva on one of the last days. I went on Sunday. I left here very, very, very late Saturday, and arrived on Sunday. Checked into a hotel, got cleaned up a little bit, and then headed over to the show for the final hours of the Sunday show. And then, of course, I was there on the Monday, which is a shorter show. It's not as long. And yeah, I mean, I think what you guys what some of you want to hear is what was really going on behind the scenes, because it's one thing showing the watches, but then there's a lot of talk about the various different characters were there. You know, Nico Leonard was there, for example. I don't think he was there when I was there. I think he had already left by then. But yeah, there were different characters at the show. As I said earlier, lucky it's a big room and we can avoid each other. It's a shame we have to, but it's also necessary, I think, in certain ways. One has to take a position with these things. The watch world has been full of scandals. You have to remember that one of the big watch dealers, up until a year ago or less, is now behind bars. So it's not just, as some people say, a hen house of people bickering at each other and spreading rumors and so on. There's actual import behind these things. Where do I start? I'll just start at there are multiple entry levels. I can go in here, entries. I can begin with, I suppose I could take the aspect of Tim Wright, who you guys know I'm a friend of. He the man has incredible tenacity, and I don't know if it's bravery or it's the way he sees it. I think bravery is when you're scared, but you head into conflict anyway. I don't think Tim is scared of anyone to his merit. And I saw certain situations where Tim is like, he saw Spencer there, for example, from BQ. He's like, Spencer. And Spencer just keeps walking because Spencer doesn't want to look at him. But he did approach Kaylee. I actually want to give a shout out to Kaylee, because Kaylee, who works for BQ Watches, because she was, I mean, clearly this is the enemy approaching her and saying hi, and he's got his camera live and stuff, and he's asking her questions, and you know, she's like, she was answering, but also kind of with her head down or looking in the opposite direction, knowing that she's speaking with someone who her boss, I guess it's not unfair to say that Spencer's her boss, literally, would not like to speak with. So, but I have to say, I want to give kudos to her, because I saw a loyalty with Kaylee. You know, she had a certain loyalty to her friend and her boss. You know, she didn't make a scene. She didn't like run away from Tim. She answered a couple of his questions, or, you know, but she also kind of looked the other way. It wasn't a warm welcome at all. And it was super awkward, but it was also, I was like, good for you, girl. There's loyalty. That's cool to see that. You're being loyal to your team. And there's no shame in that. That's fantastic, I thought. So good for her. Paul Thorpe was there. They were all interacting with, Roman Sharp, who at this point we know so many bad things about, various stunts he pulled, faking an AD guy in a dark room. That cat is completely out of the bag at this point. And what else? Oh my God, it's a list of things. Vouching for, the Wizard and people like that. But I feel like these gray market guys, they just kind of huddle together, They're like penguins during the storm, during the winter. Do you ever see that? The Life of the Penguin or whatever. Morgan Freeman narration. They huddle together. No matter what anybody thinks of the other guy, they're still traders. They're still dealers. And they huddle together in times of tempest. I don't think it does them any favors to hang out with these characters at all, but I don't think they care. I think business is business for these guys, and that's the bottom line. And I guess we all found out the hard way. I think if Timepiece Gentleman was still on the scene today, they'd be taking photos with him too. I don't think they have a moral compass when it comes to this stuff. I think they're bereft of a moral compass completely. The bottom line is money, and money is the most important thing by miles, literally miles. I won't say that about Kaylee and Gavin and understudies to these characters. They're just loyal to their boss and stuff. That's okay. They're like soldiers, it's not their fault, the war that they were dragged into. They didn't do anything, Not really. So there was that. I definitely got the feeling that we as watch YouTubers are a little bit of outcasts in that world. It might be one reason why not a whole lot of watch YouTubers actually go to the Watches and Wonders show. Or if they do, they just breeze through it like Jenny L did. She was there for literally an afternoon. I believe she flew in the morning, took a lot of footage, and then took a flight out the same day. She didn't even get a hotel or anything. Because we may be important to you guys in the watch space on YouTube, but the truth is, to these big players and these brands, we're kind of no one. We're grunts. We're kind of on the outside of it, with the exception of people like Wei Ko from Revolution Watch and a few others who have publications. They have magazines. They're watch journalists, and they're very entrenched. Even Nico Leonard, I saw some people surround him because they're like, oh, there's the guy. But I didn't see brands roll out the red carpet, because he's a vulgarian. He's on there swearing and stuff like this. And it's for a different kind of crowd than the high horology crowd, These are all men who speak multiple languages and wear haute couture, and they're in the industry end of it, and they're flying to Geneva every other weekend and having meetings in Paris and stuff like this. It's kind of what you imagine the watch world to be when you first enter it. You only come across these different kinds of characters when you wind up on YouTube and you have to interact. Now, it's given me a lot of perspective, just like reflecting on this stuff, because you look at an Adrian Barker or a Jenny L or whatever, and they really stay out of all the drama. Adrian was involved in a little drama a few years ago with Archie, but he did his best to just stamp out those flames and continue on his way. He tries to avoid the drama. Jenny does completely. I mean, Jenny's husband had that ridiculous scam of a course, 93 lessons on how to gain trust with your AD and get the watch from the AD. It was absolute snake oil scam. And I spoke about it, and Timmy spoke about it, and I posted about it on Instagram, and not a peep out of them. It shows that they're, one is they want to avoid anything, discussing anything like that. It shows also that they're extremely corporate in their ways. And they just won't engage at all. They just keep walking on, because at the end of the day, engaging with characters like us who may ask questions will only add fuel to that, right? So it's probably a pretty smart thing to just avoid that kind of stuff. With Timmy, because I know a lot of you guys know about what's going on with Timmy, I can tell you guys that I saw Timmy in really great form. He looks really good in the face and so on, like he's lost weight, but not like in a disturbing way, like in a nice way, like he looks healthier and he seems brighter and healthier. I feel like Timmy, for better or for worse, was able to unleash himself from certain chains that were holding him by the legs. It's an interesting thing. We touched off it there with Nathaniel, talking about how Fatah and Hamas, PLO versus Gaza, separated at a certain point. The moderates versus the hardliners. And it happened in Ireland as well, politically. It's one of the terrible tragedies about what happens. There's a great film with Cillian Murphy from Oppenheimer called The Wind That Shakes the Barley. If you haven't seen it, you should see it. And it explains really what happened between, everyone had a common enemy. The Irish, their enemy was the British. That was our oppressor. That was our occupier. So that was the common enemy. And we start there. But then after many, many years go by, bickering begins to happen among the oppressed. The little guy, they begin to separate as the water boils over time. So what happens is some people go, I'll take 26 counties of Ireland back, like Michael Collins did, if you know Irish history. Whereas the other side, Eamon de Valera, is like, no, we want it all back. Why should we have to make a deal with these guys? These guys took our country. We should have it all back. So it's all or nothing, and we'll fight to the death until we get it all. And then the other side are like, listen, yeah, but also pick your battles, and we can't win any more than we've done, and we should take at least this win and be happy with it. We should be happy with our bronze medal or our silver medal and forget about getting the gold medal, because the gold medal is just out of reach. And I find that's happening now in the watch space. I mean, as benign as the watch space is in comparison, I'm using heavy, important comparisons for something that's somewhat laughable, but you get what I'm saying. Like, I see bickering, the common enemy for Tim and his guys was really these gray market dealers ripping people off and getting up to all sorts of shenanigans. And that was a kind of a common goal, even with hate channels. There are some channels out there that thrive on just the gossip and the hate. And really, when you think about it, we're all kind of on the same team. We all don't like gray market guys ripping people off and blah, blah, blah. But what eventually happens, inevitably happens, is among ourselves we start bickering, and that's a terrible tragedy because the guy who we were against is looking at us going, great, they splintered. It was only a matter of time before the cracks began to show, and that's a shame. That's a terrible shame, because you're losing sight of really who the enemy is. I spoke about this a while ago on the channel referring to other things, but I think the analogy still holds. And that is that, the image is you take red ants and black ants, very different species of ant, and you put them in a jar. You put 100 of each in a jar, and they crawl over each other and stuff, but they don't attack one another. They're trying to figure each other out. You take that jar and you shake that jar vigorously for a minute, and then you put it back down. And within a few minutes, the ants start attacking each other. Black ants go against the red ants, and they start attacking each other. And whose fault was it? Was it the red ants? Was it the black ants? Or was it the person who shook the jar? And I think the enthusiast world, which is what I would call it, our world, my world, I'm in that world. I think there's a victory for the other side when they see splintering happening in our world. That's a victory for them, because now there isn't one solid wrecking ball hitting their wall. It's now a bunch of small wrecking balls that really can't break the wall. It makes so much more sense for the wrecking ball to come together into one big heavy wrecking ball that can actually bang down the wall. So as it splinters and separates, it's a shame, because it means that no one party will be that effective, or at least that's the way I see it. Now, I mentioned loyalty with Kaylee because I think everyone can take a page out of Kaylee's book. Loyalty matters in any situation, even in a relationship at home. It only matters when the going gets tough, when times are hard, when someone's going through a difficult time. You all know Dirk Kennedy, my cohort on iBashers, who I'll be going over to in just over 20 minutes. This guy saw me go through terrible times in my life years ago, and probably was tested a little bit on his friendship, but he's super loyal and strong. And I did the same for him. And I think, and I continue to do the same. And even if he's gone through a rough time, and even if I disagree on certain things, I'm still going to stand by him, because that's what loyalty is. It's standing by. We don't know Kaylee's. I hate to use Kaylee as this example. She's rather outside the stuff, but it's the first example that comes to mind because of the way I saw her deal with Timmy that time. We don't know what her actual opinions are, We don't know if she's completely an ardent supporter of her boss. Maybe she sees stuff behind closed doors that she's not exactly crazy about either. But she knows when to show loyalty, and I think that is important. I've seen apparent friends in this watch space drop their loyalty in 5 seconds, very, very easily. And I understand that there is not much loyalty in this game at all amongst us YouTubers and in the watch space in general. People tend to just run for the hills whenever they see the heat coming around the corner. That's it. And it's a shame. I think that Timmy is in a great spot. I saw him better than ever. Obviously he has a lot to say and there's a lot of stuff that he's gone through, but I actually think he's coming out stronger on the other side. And it only goes to show that the people who are apparently his friends, weren't really that loyal, really. They were, or at least they don't have a good definition of what loyalty is, in my opinion, as far as I can see. It's not like the guy fucking burnt anyone's house down or anything like that, you know. It's a funny thing with these YouTube channels, because as you get bigger as a channel, there's Tim Wright. Thank you. Member for a year, dude. A year. A year ago, I started memberships. That's amazing. Kleiner Hunt, still a member. Legend. Thank you, man. Let me see who else I missed. If I missed someone. Born to Lose 13, $5. What do you think of the new Tudor sub? I have thoughts about Tudor, and I'll be putting out a video in the coming days about that. It's a beautiful watch. Tudor, great, but I have mixed feelings about Tudor lately. And Daniel, for good friends and loyalty. Thank you, man. Listen, loyalty, it's like in a relationship. You're proving your love for your spouse isn't when the times are good. It's real easy to fall out of love with someone when they run out of money, or they run out of friends, or they fall ill. You know, they get sick, and then you have to care for them. And then all of a sudden they're not sexy anymore, or they're not cool anymore, or they're not the friend of everyone anymore. That's when you find out where your real friends are. Now, I know some people believe that Timmy's going through a bit of a moment. I personally don't think so at all. I think he's fucking grand. But they do, and even if he is, even if you think he is, where's your fucking loyalty? You know what I mean? Show some goddamn loyalty, you miserable SOB. Fucking help your friend through his tough moment. Don't fucking walk. Because if you walk, you were never a real friend in the first place. Right? That's simple to understand. I thought about the larger channels. As your channel gets bigger, it's like flying higher on a plane. You know, I was just mentioning there how Jenny L avoids all the drama, and Adrian does too, and guys like Teddy Baltazar and so on. And even Nico avoids drama too. He just got into drama with me because of owing money. And turns out he has very weird techniques, illegal techniques. He engages in illegal activity to get paid. And it happens when your channel gets bigger. It's like going, and you know, planes used to fly at 15,000 feet or 10,000 feet. Some military planes still do. And it's a real rough ride. It's bumpy because there's all this fucking air and clouds and shit. The advent of jet engines meant we could go up at 35,000 feet and fly above the weather. And that's kind of what happens, you know, when you get a bigger channel. On my channel's getting a little bigger now, and you kind of start flying a little higher above it. You're a bigger target because people want to shoot you down, but you're also above all of that stuff that's happening down at the bottom. All of that bickering and that arguing and so on. A lot of these characters have no channel, or a small channel with 1,000 subs or whatever. And it's like the old image, the old metaphor of crabs in a big pot, boiling water at the bottom of the pot. And the crabs, you know, it's like lobsters, you have to boil them alive, you know. And the crabs try to get out. They're all crawling around looking for a way out because the water's getting hot. It's a horrible image. But if one crab actually gets a hold of something, maybe somehow crawling on top of two other crabs, and he gets a hold of the edge and he starts pulling himself out, the other crabs see and they grab him because they want to get out. But by grabbing him, they drag him down with their weight back into the water. And it's one of the terrible tragedies of life, is that down there at the bottom, all the bottom feeders start, eating each other, really. It always confused me why the hate channels, some of whom are watching right now, have fun this evening pulling this conversation apart, by the way, boys. No, it's not a conversation, really. It's a monologue. It always confused me why they're going after small channels. These guys, they thrive on gossip and, debunking and all of that stuff. That's their currency. That's their industry. That's what they do. And that's fine. That's their little niche. But I often wondered, why aren't they going after, a Nico Leonard, for example? There's tons of shit on that guy. Oh, my God. I'm just hearing now that the hotel where Pride and Pinion is are sick of them and want them out. I heard tons of shit from fucking Jasper and Eric and so on in Holland back when I had that problem. You're not asking yourselves why this guy just ran away from fucking Holland and reinvented himself with a Northern Irish accent. But they don't go near that's a big fish. This guy's got a lot of subs. Surely you get a lot more clicks if you say, a title like, uncovering the truth about. But no, they're after the little guy with another little gossip channel. That's kind of weird to me. Take CoffeeZilla, for example. He's a huge troll. He's one of the biggest debunkers and trollers on the internet, and he has a huge YouTube channel, CoffeeZilla. But he's after Andrew Tate. He's after the big guys with pyramid schemes going on and stuff like that. And he's debunking all of these scams that are going on. And clearly, if your title says the truth behind Andrew Tate's university, well, whatever it was called, what was it called? Something university for winners, to make money and so on. It was a fucking pyramid scheme. But CoffeeZilla goes after that and he puts that in his title. Millions are going to click on that. So why not go after producer Michael, who has if you want to stay within the watch space, producer Michael's massive, Nico's massive. There are other massive channels that have discrepancies that you could go after, but they leave them alone, which is weird to me. They'd rather even invent shit about smaller channels that are right next to them. And again, it's like the crabs in the pot, or the guy not going after the guy who shook the jar with the ants. It's like that. It's like the ants fighting the other ants and not talking to one another, going, listen, we're all roughed up after that shaking, but it wasn't any of you guys. It was that guy outside. If we could get to him, he's the problem. Or if we can get out of this jar, then we'll solve our problem. It always confuses me why they insist on going after kind of their brothers, really. Now some of these guys are super corrupt and they've been infiltrated by bigger guys. Tim is one of the few that I still trust left. And I have an instinct for this shit, guys. Goes back years. I didn't get to 50 learning nothing. I was in the music business. That's fucking dog eat dog. So I saw this from a long time ago, who was genuine and who's not genuine. And Tim, for all his flaws, he's not a perfect person. He's far from it. I don't think he'd ever pretend to be. But he's still a loyal guy and he still speaks the truth. And yeah, it's very odd to me. I feel like if you're a small channel and you're a hate channel or you're a troll channel or you're exposed, let's look at TPG. They were all right. All these little channels who went after Timepiece Gentleman, trying to, it was pretty easy because the guy has a jacket this thick of fucking arrests. But someone went back and found all of that shit and uncovered all of that stuff. And at the time, he was a big channel and they got a lot of views, and probably most of their subscribers they have to today they got from that. They're not getting subscribers after attacking Tim or another channel or another little watch channel. How many subscribers are you going to get out of that? You're going to have 20 people watching, whereas you're going to have 2,000 watching if you talk about a bigger channel. I'm stating the obvious, but I feel like I have to here, you know. Yeah. It's also it's kind of a loner's game as well. When you have a YouTube channel, it's not like you have a whole lot of, you can find yourself alone very, very quickly. I did 2 years ago. Remember? You were all witness. I thought I had friends and I realized I didn't have friends at all. Actually, Timmy was one of the only ones who came through for me, and I'll never forget that, ever. So even if Timmy was going through a tough time, which I don't think he is really, I think he's fine. But even if he was, I'd still stand by him, because that's the mark of a man. Sorry, but that's the truth. Some were saying that one of the other hate channels, a big one, I'm not going to mention his name because I don't want to send traffic his way. I would actually, had he introduced himself, but he didn't. But some were saying that there was another big channel, well, not big, but you know, one of the bigger of the, one of the more infamous, you might say, of the scandal gossip channels was there. But he never introduced himself to me. I would have appreciated it, actually. I would have been fine with it. There were some interesting characters. I met a lot of different people, shook a lot of hands, a lot of different folks. Some people were a little tongue-tied, you know, which is, you know, I do my best to just be normal and go, listen, let's have a chat about watches or talk about the event or whatever. Like, I'm fucking no one. Look, there's no reason to be. I guess people are looking at me on the screen now for a few years, so maybe then you meet the person in person and you're a little bit like, you know, not starstruck because it's not a star, but something along those lines. I think I'd be, if I met Archie, I'd be like, oh, there he is. I've been looking at this guy now for years. And there he is in the flesh, you know. I'd probably be a bit like that or something. Or if I met somebody big in the music business, you know, meet Peter Gabriel or someone like that, I'll be like, oh my God. But yeah, there was some weird guys. There was one guy and he was so nervous. He was so some people are saying he was a certain character. I don't know if he was or not, but some strange guy came over to me at some point and mentioned something about Israel. I was like, okay, you know, this is coming out of left field, but fine. But his hand was shivering, you know, it was shaking. He shook my hand and I could feel his hand shaking. He was very, very nervous. And I thought, oh God, like, is he okay? Like, is he some fucking zealot, some Zionist zealot, and he wants to fucking spit at me or something like that? You know, you never know with these. They're very aggressive. Zionist zealots are very, very aggressive people. They're very ardent and very, they can be possibly, you know, aggressive. So I was like, okay, I've got this guy in front of me now. All right. But I felt he was so nervous and slightly unhinged. I was like, I'll just say, sure, man. Yeah. You know, and just let him go, just walk away. I'm like, fuck. Some people are just, at first I thought he was like a huge fan. Maybe he was a big fan. I don't know. But some people think he's certain individual. I don't know if he was. If it was that individual, he should have introduced himself. We could have had a good old chat. We could have had a nice conversation about the whole thing. And, I don't believe he's been particularly vicious toward me, although I don't watch his stuff. I try to avoid all of that stuff. People are just going to keep talking about you. As the channel gets bigger, they'll talk about me more and more and more. So why on earth would I watch their shit and listen to their rhetoric? It's just no thanks. But I think next time there's an event like that, even if you don't like me or you have said bad things about me, just tell me who you are, if you are that person, and just fucking introduce yourself, and have a conversation. Might be interesting. Why not? But overall, people were very nice, and there was a good vibe in Geneva. I have to say one thing. The word on the street there is that the Watches and Wonders show, was a lot less packed than it has been in recent years. That they were saying on the website, sold out, but it was fairly slim. And I tend to believe that because, of course, the watch market now has, calmed down a lot in the past couple of years. So it would stand to reason why there's a less frenzy about the stuff, Let's have a look at the chat. Araya, he looked like an IDF guy. No, this dude was kind of lanky and odd and frail, and I don't think he looked like an IDF guy. I think, in fair, I'm not a big fan of the IOF, is what I would call them, the offense force, not a defense force. Those guys, at least to their credit, they're fairly burly in many cases. So I don't know. Let's go back here. Daniel, was Diego a Judas? I'm not gonna badmouth the guys. I expressed my general opinion. I think they're all fairly decent guys. I don't have any personal bones to pick with any of the lads. But again, it's, people begin to lose focus of who the real enemy is or who the real problem is, and they start bickering amongst themselves. Same thing. I'm not going to go back over it. David Hunter, NYC. CoffeeZilla doesn't go after YouTube channels. He goes after scammers, plain and simple. Sure, but, Andrew Tate was social media, right? That's where his domain was. So maybe he didn't have a YouTube channel per se, but he was social media, and that's the vehicle he was using. But yeah, you're right. I mean, CoffeeZilla will go over into the crypto world as well. A lot of scams over there. Billie Jean, so fuck me dead, O'Sheen. You ran away from New York City. No, I don't have warrants in New York City. I didn't run away from New York City. I still have an office there and storage and family in the United States. I came over to Italy to get married. That just fell through. Then COVID happened and I wound up stuck here and run away. You're feeding into unfortunately, you're listening to these channels who are telling you things and you're just believing them. Nico is a big name. Now you're probably, you're nobody compared to him. Certainly, yeah, Nico's a much bigger channel. Do you have some sort of gripe? You're watching. What's your problem? You sound like a jealous, scorned lover. Do I? I don't have any jealousy toward Nico. Myself and Nico were friends, even when his channel was way, way bigger than mine. I mean, back when he was 500,000-600,000 subs, much, much bigger, and I was at 60,000. And we were mates, and we were fucking on. I was on one of his lives all night, but just the two of us drinking beers. So you're projecting. Maybe you're a scorned lover. Maybe you have jealousy. and you're trying to project that onto me. Meanwhile, here you are watching. What a strange contradiction that is. I think you need a long, hard look in the mirror, my friend John Doe. Nico is just using controversy for views. No, Nico, in fairness to Nico, he just does, scandalous. Oh, that guy's got a fake watch or whatever, because that gets views, Maybe that's what you mean. He's so disingenuous. Anything that gets views, he'll behave that way. Yes, I believe that. But I believe a lot of YouTubers, not even just in the watch space, but across the board, are disingenuous, just looking for views. It's definitely part of the environment, of the ecosystem here. JMB, you should be sponsored by Panerai. Perfect fit. I know, isn't it great? Let me loom it up again. That's the wrong one. Use this one. Looks great. The loom is good. How's that? Nice. Woo. Love the Pam. This is a 47 mil, guys. If you have the wrist for it, it's a good looking watch. Tax Pro, what happened to him? I mean, nothing. He's fine. He's good. It's kind of ebbs and flows with panel members, After all, it's not like these people are getting paid or anything. So it's really, they're there for the laugh and a bit of fun, and they get to express their opinions. You guys are in the chat expressing your opinions, and that's probably very frustrating at times, because you don't get a word in, or your opinion doesn't get read unless you super chat it and stuff like that. It's quite liberating to be on a panel and actually have a microphone and speak then to the hundreds or maybe thousands of people who are watching. And there's a certain allure to that, I'm sure. Chillin' barefoot, 2 Swiss francs. Loyalty, like respect, is deserved, not unconditional. No, I would say loyalty is unconditional. Otherwise, it's not loyalty. I would disagree with you, Chillin' there. Loyalty should be unconditional, otherwise it isn't loyalty. That dude Dave, as a Dubliner, I'm willing to bet Mrs. O'Malley taught her kids, you never let your own down. She taught me a great many things, and they were great. They continue to be great things. My mother still gives me advice to this day, and I always listen. Don't always follow, and to my own detriment sometimes. Buckley, I don't know which Buckley that is. I like the avatar, though. American Gangster. What Oisin can see is what Tim tells him. Oh, I can see a little bit more than that. You're not giving me enough credit. This is total bullshit. Tim threw away 20 of us inside a week over delusional conspiracy. Sorry, Oisin, you're way off. Best of luck to you and Tim. Well, I can see a lot, man. More than what just Tim tells me. You think I just stay waiting at the behest of Tim to give me all the information? Come on. A little bit smarter than that. I can see a lot. But I appreciate the comment. Watch Apprentice. Go and do whatever you got to do, but don't go on the hate streams and drag someone's name through the mud. You saying that to me? I don't go on the hate streams. I've never been on... I don't think I've ever been on a hate stream, have I? I mean, I've been on Archie's once. They just all just sat there and attacked me. I just had a smoke and a drink and sat there taking it. Fun. Raya, Hulk fan, always be late. The early bird catches the worm but gets involved in politics. Also means the worm got up earlier and should have stayed in bed. I learn that lesson every day, man. But again, I mean, I don't know. I feel like, just on the thoughts there and Tim's thing, I feel like he kind of let everyone into the room. You know, when you let like you have a party in your house and you just kind of leave the door open and everyone fucking walks and starts opening your fridge and your freezer and, smoking cigarettes, even though you don't want a smoker in the house or whatever, and things kind of get out of control. I've got I think I have like 2 people with a wrench for my channel. That's it. And I have a bigger channel, I feel like Tim was far too generous. He's always too generous with people, and he just kind of lets people run riot. And I think it was aging for him. I'll say it again. The guy looks great. Usually when you see a person look great, like in the face and so on, it's a sign. I hung out with him as well. It wasn't just his looks. The guy was very relaxed and very focused and seemed calmer and more at ease. And I believe it's because he kind of went, okay, guys, party's over. Everybody go home. I'm shutting the door now a little bit. And I can understand that. I wouldn't have fucking been able to handle it. All the people in the room, all having power, banning various different people in the chat and so on. I'd be like, hold on, who did that? Hands up, It would be a mess. I'd just be a mess. I think Tim just took a little bit of his own power back. And he's still kind of the main chat channel out there. He's the place where people still go to talk, especially about various scandals in the watch world and so on. That could change in the future. Things ebb and flow. That used to be Archie. Then it became Tim. It could be someone new in the future. But, and that's just the natural way of things. But I think that Tim is, I think he did it for his own mental health. And I don't see anything wrong with that. And it's especially proven when guys just, the minute anything goes wrong, they fucking up and leave. Like that just shows that you just had this hanger on. You had a guy who was in your party just for the free beer. That's why he was in your house party. He was there for the free beer. So when the free beer dried up, he was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to another party. Goodbye. No loyalty. That's what that is. James Ball, $2 super sticker. Thank you so much, man. Just going through. There's a lot of chat here, so I'm just picking them randomly. Danny Cook, let's grab this one. Telling other people they should make their own channel is taking his power back. Question mark. The math isn't mathing here. All right. Again. And you know what will happen, I think, essentially, is some of the other characters will make their channel and then they'll have their growth. And in 2 years, they'll start bickering among themselves for something else, and then that'll split. It tends to just be the natural cycle of things. It happened to Archie a million times. He changed his panel like 100 times at this point. I had friends. I used to go on lives and, things came to an end. And then you move on. That's it, I think people shouldn't underestimate him because the guy has tenacity to burn. Like, I don't see an end to his tenacity. He's just unstoppable. Nothing phases him. After all, like, think about his panel would make fun of him constantly, put him down constantly. I know it was in jest. I know it was. But the way he would just constantly always take it, he was always the butt end of everyone's joke, even though they're on his channel, He was always like the guy up for ridicule at every moment. And he kind of played the jester. That's kind of his shtick, I suppose, at this point. But be careful about people who make jokes, nasty jokes, because sometimes they're masquerading their contempt for you inside a joke. I was recently described as one of the most loyal supporters of Tim, and I thought to myself, I can think of a bunch of other people who should be way higher on that list than me. People who were there with him through everything, at all the events, and doing the lives all the time. Surely they should be the most loyal. Turns out they weren't. Fuck. That's rough. And Tim didn't steal anyone's money. I saw people taking photos with men at Watches and Wonders who are provably involved with watch theft and criminal activity, honestly. What the fuck? That's nuts to me. People are incomprehensible. That's the lesson. Incomprehensible. But luckily for Tim, he doesn't. It affects him, sure. It affects him emotionally and so on, but he's just incredibly resilient. So good for him. And I think that'll stand to his credit in the coming months, personally. That's my opinion. You don't have to agree with it. I'm just telling you my opinion. And you're here watching. Bobby, if, say, Patek pulled out of Watches and Wonders and Chopard and Cartier, then the wheels will fall off. Yeah, well, we all thought the Basel World wheels fell completely off, right? Very, very quickly. You're right. But I think a lot of people just go for Rolex and Tudor, honestly. For all the other wonderful brands that are there, there's a lot. I would say 50% of the people show up just to see the new Rolex and the new Tudor. It's phenomenal. They still dominate. Whether they deserve it or not is a whole other discussion, but they still dominate. That is the end of the show, guys. Thanks for hanging out. I'm going to end it and go over to Dirk on the Eyebashers. I believe he started about 10 or 15 minutes ago. Thanks for listening, and thanks to Nathaniel for coming on and laying the cards down pretty hardcore, which he always does, and explains himself extremely coherently. And I truly appreciate his views. So it was great having him on. I hope you guys appreciated him. And I'll try to keep these Friday nights interesting as always. I will see you guys over on Eyebashers. If you have autoplay on, you might get bumped over. If not, let me give you the link right now for the show. Myself and Dirk might talk about this stuff. I don't know. Or we might talk about other stuff. One thing's for sure, it'll probably be a lot more lighthearted. It just tends to be. Dirk is a happier character than I. He's a guy who looks at the glasses half full and not half empty. That's just his nature, and that's why we love him. There is the link. That doesn't really help, does it? Okay, just look for Eyebashers. There it is. Eyebashers. And you'll find it. Just search for Eyebashers on YouTube. And he's live right now. I'm going to go straight over there in 10 seconds. Thanks for hanging out on a Friday. I hope something in there was interesting. Have a good night, folks. Take care. See you in a minute. Over with Dirk. If you have autoplay on, just leave it running.